please. Oh, this has been on the whole time. What conversations have you people been eavesdropping on, I wonder? The mind boggles. Can you please move your seating so that you can adjust yourselves to view camera 1, camera 2. Thank you. Now, earlier on, for those people who live elsewhere in the world and aren't aware of this, we went on a Probus tour to India, a magnificent tour. And one of our wonderful members, Anne Meade, is going to give us a talk now as a guest speaker on our travels in India. But something I have to ask of you first. Another one of our magnificent members who went away and gave us the most fantastic video report of things that I didn't even get to see, and I was there, gave us a report from Go to Woe, Barry. Barry is behind us. And Barry will and can film today if it's okay with our members. Are you in agreement that Barry can, as a final gesture, film today's meeting? Is there anybody who objects? That's a no. I beg your pardon, somebody put up their hand. Carol. You choose.
I'll leave the room then.
Carol, have you taken that on board, please, Barry? It will not be a photograph of any of us, it will be here at the front with Anne. Let me put your mind at rest. Okay, Anne, I would like to introduce to all of you, if you don't know Anne yet, and the only way that we can really get to know people, and I'll emphasise this, and the outings people will bear me here, that is to go away on our trips, isn't it? To go away on our outings, to go away on our day trips, our lunches, our small trips, our big trips, our overseas trips, and joining in with other clubs. My goodness, the richness of it. It brings back friendship, fellowship and fun to infinity. Please let us all welcome Anne to the podium now. Thank you very, very much.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Welcome to my presentation, which contains some of my photos, plus a few from other members of the group. As Valerie said, she saw things in the videos that she didn't see in person, and the same happened with me. People got better photos or photos that I didn't get. Please excuse me from reading from prepared notes, but this will help me to know what to show, when to show the next photo, and I will be assisted by Valerie, as we have only one control for the television sets. And if I stand here, I can't control that one. So if you see me nodding, I'm not getting dementia. That's my signal for Valerie to flick both across. So I hope it works out for us. Right, on Tuesday, 21st of February, 24 intrepid Probus members and friends set off from Canberra Airport just after midnight for Singapore and India. We all agreed that being able to fly direct to Singapore from Canberra was a great plus, saving us much time and probably a few dollars as well. We arrived in Singapore early in the morning, and after a quick breakfast we were off to explore the city. As this was my first visit, I was very impressed with what I saw. We had passes for a hop-on, hop-off bus, which proved to be a great way to get about. Several of us started off on the same bus, with our first stop being the Botanic Gardens. Unfortunately, the famous Orchid House was closed due to a private function. And these screens, instead of showing photos like that, it's flipped them. I'm sorry, that's one of them. It's flipped. This is the bottom. Anyway, a couple of them you'll just have to, so you're all getting them. This is a photograph of Chopin, or a sculpture, and this monk and his friend were there, and I asked if he would mind if I took his photo as well, and he didn't. It gives some great contrast to that. Okay, we then did a full circuit on the bus to map out what to do the next day, when our first stop was Chinatown. Again. Here Mary, my roommate, who is from Queanbeyan, Probus, and I wandered through the market stalls and bought our first souvenirs. Then we went to the gardens by the bay, which I think most of us visited. Oh, we're still in Chinatown.
Sorry,
Beautiful old piece of furniture, whatever it was, I don't know. It was in a travel agent's, I think, and I went in and asked if they would mind if I took a photograph. Okay, this building is known as the boat or the ship. 3 buildings and the ship across the top. And there was a swimming pool and more apartments up on the top, I believe. Okay, we're now in the gardens by the bay. We spent several hours here, almost to the time where we were kicked out. After a general wander around, we entered the flower dome, a huge covered area featuring flowers and plants from various parts of the world, from tropical to Mediterranean to semi-arid. And if you just like to go through those, thanks, Valerie. That was one of the sculptures. This was another one. They were absolutely magnificent. Huge, some of them.
And they're out of wood, are they?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, look at that. Dragon.
Huh, I didn't see this.
I'm glad you've come today, Valerie. That was on a wall. Okay, as it was around the time of the Chinese New Year, there were displays featuring the rooster, the Chinese zodiac animal for 2017. And you can see him here and here and here.
Oh, yeah.
Lastly, we entered the cloud forest, another huge structure featuring, oh, that's, can you just leave it on that for a moment?
I'm sorry. Back again.
Lego.
Oh,
Lego. Amongst the real picture plants. And that's what the previous one was over there. The green, that's the Lego. There was even a Lego spider, redback spider, hanging down amongst them.
I'm out of sync here.
See, this one.
Got it.
Good. And there's just the beautiful picture plants where they capture the insects, and that's their food. Another little sculpture there, animals in a boat, cranes. I'm sorry this is so slow, but if we had two things. Right, lastly, on our last morning, we visited an Anglican church near the hotel, and then the famous Raffles Hotel. We went into the bar where the gin sling was made. It was too early in the morning for that, and it probably would have broken the bank. And then we flew on to New Delhi. Here we were met by our Indian guide, Vikram, who welcomed us with the traditional namaste, a respectful greeting meaning, I bow to the divine in you, and is used as we would say hello or good morning. He then placed individual lays of marigolds around our necks, and we then met Mr. Singh, our coach driver, and Akbar, his assistant. Right, so this is our flight. As you can see, we came in to Delhi, Varanasi, back to Delhi, and so. That, by the way, is sort of up in this part of India. There's all this part that we didn't see. A little general information. India covers an area of just over 3 million square kilometres compared to Australia of 7.7 million square kilometres. India's population is 1.3 billion compared to Australia of only 24 million. India is the 7th largest country and the 2nd most populous nation, China being the most populous, and India is also the most populous democracy in the world. According to the Constitution, the official language of the government, or languages, sorry, of the government are Hindi and English. And currently there are 22 official languages in the country, and 10 of these are spoken each by 25 million people. The cities we visited, as I showed you there, New Delhi, Varanasi, Agra, Jaipur, Samod, Jodhpur, Deoghar, Udaipur and Mumbai. And if I hesitate over the pronunciation of some of the names as we go through, I'm right, of course. Looking out of the hotel window on the first morning, I saw a heavy smog which never fully cleared all day. After visiting the Red Fort in Delhi, we formed a Congo line of rickshaws, which took us on a ride through the narrow streets of a bustling market area. Some of you will find yourselves in some of these photos, particularly when we go on the elephant ride.
Rubbish on the ground? Oh, no.
What? Never. Okay, an electrician's nightmare. That's. I know I've got another one I think that shows it better, but you can see what I mean by that. The electrician's nightmare. Wires just hanging everywhere, and I noticed Sharon has that in her book. It was just horrendous, really. I'm still going through the marketplace. Pokey little holes in the wall quite often, and they specialise in one product only. See, that was all fabric, the other one was things made up. There's your electrician's nightmare. Any electricians in the room? Okay. And then we went to the memorial to Mahatma Gandhi. You had to take your shoes off, even though you were walking on fabric around there if you wanted to go down. Otherwise you could observe from an area wall all the way around, which is where I took my photograph from. And then there are a series of his sayings. A word uttered from a pure heart never goes in vain. The soul dries up without the company of the good. Do not listen to rumour, but if you do, do not believe it. Selfishness keeps us worrying forever. Okay, a few general observations. While generally speaking, traffic drives on the left, drivers of cars, motorbikes, rickshaws, motor scooters bicycles and tuk-tuks weave to left and right whenever they see a gap. There is incessant noise from the blowing of horns, and we wondered about the road rules. Vikram said they were on paper only, guidance. He said 3 things were required for driving: a good horn, good brakes, and good luck. At many traffic lights, there were often women and children, some as young as 4 or 5 years, walking between the vehicles, selling flowers, souvenirs, or simply begging. India has the 3rd largest army after China and the United States, and there's no compulsory conscription. All soldiers are volunteers. From India, we flew to Varanasi. Driving from the airport, there were lots of billboards advertising all types of goods and services. Most prolific were those for educational facilities, schools from K to year 12, both government and private, but quite a lot of private, as well as secretarial, business and technical institutions. In Hindu countries, cows are considered sacred. In fact, most Hindus treat all living creatures with respect. Hindus do not worship cows, although they are held in high esteem, and this is particularly so in India. They wander across the streets and around villages and marketplaces. They're not at all perturbed by people or vehicles, and people often provide food for them and the many stray dogs and any other animals which might be about.
The smell must be wonderful.
We visited Sarnath, where Buddha preached his first sermon to 5 of his disciples. It's now a large area of ruined monasteries, and the Dharmak Stupa marks the location of a once resplendent monastery. Quite a large building. Next morning, early wake-up call for a short drive towards the river Ganges. A walk through narrow lanes of Varanasi where people were sleeping in the streets.
That's person under there.
This is quite early in the morning, so the shops weren't open, those rollers. That's one on the side, but there's several people there sleeping. And this walk brought us to the Ghats, where people come to bathe and wash their clothes in the holy water of Mother Ganges and to offer prayers. The word Ghats is used in South Asia to refer to steps leading down to a river. The Ghats at Varanasi stretch for about 6 kilometres along the water's edge. We had a 2-hour boat ride during which we each floated a lighted candle surrounded by flowers as we drifted along. Hawkers would tie their boats to ours and offer their wares for sale. Lots and lots of boats, lots of tourists. We certainly outnumbered the locals who were down there for washing of themselves and their clothes. There was a laundry, obviously, everything out to dry. This is one of the boats that pulled up beside with their elephants, postcards, bowls, bracelets, etc. And you can see examples of quite a lot of those things that everybody has brought in. And I do thank those of you who were on the trip and brought your things along to put on display today. And while we're at that, I'll just mention this. This was not purchased there, but Diane is making this into a quilt or bed cover, and that's all appliqué on there. And the elephant was quite obvious. Everywhere we went in the country there were signs of elephants, little elephants that were carved, huge carvings in stone of elephants, things like this. Elephant pants. I think someone's wearing their elephant pants today. Jeanette has her elephant pants on. They were everywhere. At one point, we witnessed a body being carried down to the river, and we also saw the smouldering remains of a funeral pyre, and we were asked not to photograph that particular part of the river. But this shows the stacks of wood that were here, and we used just a little further along was where they actually lit the funeral pyres. After all that, the walk back to our coach affected me more than the sights and sounds of life and death by the river. By the time we walked back, a lot of the stalls were open, but just the poverty, and that was where it really hit me that day. I was right before and I was okay after, and I know someone else that affected them quite like that down at Varanasi. The current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, is from Varanasi, and there were many posters featuring his image endorsing candidates from his party who were seeking local elections. Before leaving Varanasi, we visited a silk factory. Though we didn't actually see the spinning of cocoons into silk, we did see the silk thread being woven into cloth. This skill is passed on from one generation to another. Now that's the back of the work. You can see all the threads and all the colours. And then there's a couple of close-ups of just sections of that big picture that you saw before. There are 10 families in the area, and each has its own design. The weaving is all done manually, either by 2 men using many different colours, or 1 man using only 3 colours. The fabric is 45 inches wide, and they produce between 3 and 20 centimetres a day.
Oh, gosh. It's very interesting.
Right, back to New Delhi. The next morning we drove around for a sightseeing tour, visiting India Gate, which was actually standing upright. It's a memorial to Indian soldiers who died in World War I. Just to prove I was there. And it is standing. Yeah, we're both standing up. The next one, oh no, it is standing up as well. There were quite nice gardens there as well. At different times during our tour, Vikram would tell us about various aspects of life in India. Sikhs, whom we all associate with being from India because they wear the turban, I'll use for want of a better word, they make up only 1.5% of the population, but they're very hard workers. India is the largest democracy in the world. The parliament consists of 585 members in the Congress, the lower house, and 250 in the Council of States, the upper house. As mentioned earlier, the population of India is 1.3 billion people. Life in India is governed by a family astrologer, beginning at birth, including giving the newborn its name, choosing a life partner, and verifying the compatibility of the couple. In several cities we stayed in old palaces, some in much better condition than others, and the first of these was JP Palace in Agra. We also visit Humayun's tomb, a World Heritage Monument. Some beautiful buildings in the design. This tomb of him and 2 of his wives. There were several people buried in this area. The beautiful hand carving in marble. In some places there was inlay work in the marble. As no diesel or petrol-driven vehicles are permitted near the Taj Mahal, we travelled only a short distance in our coach before transferring to electric vehicles and then walking the final few hundred metres. The outer walls to the whole complex were constructed of red sandstone, which added to the contrast of the pure white marble of the Taj Mahal. And there are several photographs here which Valerie can just go through. The marble was sourced from a quarry about 340 kilometres away. It took 22 years to complete and employed 20,000 craftsmen and labourers. It was built by Shah Jahan as the funeral place and memorial to his beloved wife and queen, and it's one of the 7 wonders of the world, and it certainly is. It was a beautiful building. I thought I might have been disappointed because you hear so much about it and see so much, but it was absolutely magnificent. Yes, it's very strong. You didn't realise, did you? We were all as strong as that. We all have photos taken like that. Vikram asked the professional photographer to take several photographs of each of us, and we were then able to purchase them. Squirrels were found in quite a few places in the gardens surrounding in the beautiful buildings that we saw. We visited a marble and precious stone inlay workshop. Gives you an idea of what some of the work was like. There were things there for purchase, well over my weight limit. They were so heavy. Okay, we then went on to the Agra Fort, which contains palaces, private and public audience rooms and other halls. And there's quite a few photos of this. And you can see some of the inlay work in that. And this red sandstone was popular in a lot of the places we visited. Beautiful gardens. Keep off the grass. On our way to dinner one night, we saw several wedding processions where the groom was riding a white horse and was accompanied by a group of male, female, family and friends. I think very few people go to India without, as I did, my first encounter of Delhi belly, which unfortunately accompanied me for the rest of the trip. I was not the only one, despite us all being extremely careful about using only bottled water. And the bottles had written on them, "Crush the bottle after use." This was to prevent unscrupulous people from filling the bottles with local water, applying a little glue and selling it off as fresh bottled water. We saw a couple who had been married the previous night, and the groom was taking his bride to his family home. And this was explained to us by Vikram, our guide, taking for the first time. He explained that the bride's brothers would come for her later in the day to return her to her family home, and in a week the groom would claim her again. From the time a suitable partner is chosen and accepted by both families, often in consultation with an astrologer, some wedding procedures can take up to 6 months to complete. Not far beyond the city, we were passing crops and a line of tractors with trailers loaded with sacks of potatoes. In the towns and villages, there are hole-in-the-wall shops and freestanding stalls selling all types of goods, fresh fruit, vegetables and services, similar to what I'd seen in other Middle Eastern countries and in Morocco. The Hall of Public Audience and Fata per Sikri, can we leave that one for a minute, consists of an extensive courtyard enclosed by cloisters containing 111 bays. And these are the bays that went all around. Some of them had paintings in them, a lot of them had worn off the walls because they'd been there for so long. It was here that the Emperor Akbar heard petitions and dispensed justice, quote, sternly and impartially, but without harshness or ill will. And these were buildings within the palace compound. And this was similar in most of them. You would go in through a gate, be surrounded by a large hall, and there'd be many, many different buildings that were used for public audiences or were the female quarters and the living quarters for the rest of the royal family and his hangers-on. Some more carving. Right, only for different abled person. Toilet. There were a couple of signs like that were just different in their explanation of what they were. We won't go into what some of the toilets were like. Unless anybody would like to? No thanks, that tells you enough. Okay. We saw several double-decked long-distance buses. The top deck appeared to be rather cramped, and in some of them, many passengers were sleeping. There was one that was beside us for quite a while, and we kept sort of passing each other. And there was a woman and a little boy, and every time he went past, we'd all wave to him, he'd wave back, you know, and then we'd pass them, and we'd all wave. Right, we were... Next day, after the traffic noise of the previous night, and this was some of it, when we arrived in Jaipur at 7:45, the next morning at 8 o'clock was remarkably devoid of traffic and noise. However, what little traffic there was certainly vocal. And this is entrance gate in Jaipur. Jantar Mantar in Jaipur is the largest stone and marble observatory in the world. Even if one had no great interest in astronomy, this was a fascinating place. One sundial is accurate to within 20 seconds, and a much larger one is accurate to within 2 seconds. Although India covers several time zones, for the sake of convenience, the whole country operates on Delhi time. Monkeys in several places. Here they were feeding them. That wasn't always the case. In some places we were told to hang on to our bags, because if they smelt food or suspected that you might have food, you might lose your bag, or at least a hand would pop into it to try and find something to eat. They were cheeky little things. A small part of the Maharaja's city palace is still occupied by the royal family of Jaipur. Several museums and palaces are now used as hotels, and photographs of members of the royal families often were on the walls of these buildings. There were many individual buildings, once again, in this palace. And there was a textile gallery, an armoury museum with an impressive array of pistols, blunderbusses, flintlocks, swords, rifles and daggers, an indication that the family were well armed throughout the years. Part of this palace is still occupied by the Maharaja and his family, so it was beautifully maintained, which wasn't always the case. we had a demonstration of how patterns were printed on fabric, and some of the group tried their hand. He made the first imprint, and then when the second one came, it went over the top. So he had to line it up exactly, and that was how they end up with their printed fabric. We then had one for demonstration purposes, and I think by this stage there were 2 or 3 different colours on that when Irene did her bit, and then the next colour was put on, which Ursula did, and then there was another colour, the green, and that was the finished product. But you had to be very careful that you put it exactly. So you can imagine in that first fabric where there was image after image after image, and he just had one little stamp. Stamp, stamp. A good eye, obviously. This was followed by a visit to a carpet factory, where we saw various stages of carpet manufacturing, from weaving. Just go through all of these, thank you. To brushing the finished product, to then clipping them, which looked like the old clippers we used to do the edge of the lawn with, shears. He did that. You can see a little more clearly the point on the shears where he's doing that. And brushed it, and then singed it for any errant threads to produce a smooth, even finish. So again, very careful that he didn't burn the carpet, because I guess he would have lost his job if he'd done that. Mid-afternoon we visited a shop where hundreds of sets of fabric, which are used to make outfits, were made. The finished garments were delivered to us at dinner that same night, and there were 2 or 3 of us at least who bought things there. These are the tuk-tuks, motorised in this instance. Sometimes they were, well, a bit more the rickshaw with the bicycle boy on front. I pitied some of those boys at times when they had to take us through the narrow streets of the markets, and sometimes even up a little bit of a rise. We visited a local market, which was quite an experience, and again you can see that they sell only one type of thing. They were chimes in that particular store. Some jewellery. And I lost count of the number of storekeepers who had a pashmina just for you, madam. Suffice to say, I would have needed another large carry-on bag to bring them all home if I bought them. Again, all fabrics. Each time we returned to the coach, there were street sellers offering their wares, and they were offering things like carved elephants, painted elephants perhaps, scarves, and the bangles. Bangles were offered many places. And what would happen was Vikram would take a selection of these and bring them into the bus and ask if anybody wanted them. However, I saw one of the fellows and grabbed several sets of these and sold a few of them down the bus, and I had one left. So they were 200 rupee, $4. When I had one left and I'd already bought what I wanted, he gave me the last one for $2. So I ended up with 3 sets. Next day we were in Jaipur, and this is the Wind Palace, where the women of the harem would watch the proceedings below while hidden from the view of the ordinary people. And opposite them were these wonderful men, the snake charmers. And thank you to those people who sent me their photographs, as I didn't get a decent one at all. Our next stop was Amor Fort and Palaces. To reach this, way up there, we rode on elephants. A little on the bumpy side, but preferable, though possibly not quicker, than walking up the incline. And you'll now see a rogues gallery of several of us.
Poor elephant.
Just keep going right through those, please. There are quite a few of them. I think most people were captured by one or other of us on these. Well, it was the elephant that... Sorry, Diane. Right. And it was just like a Congo line of elephants going up and coming back down empty, getting more passengers and going up again. It was fun. The fortress wall, the defences, right up along all of the mountains around us, plus the wall around as well, so they were very well fortified there. They certainly would have seen any invading army coming. Sorry about this slowness. If we'd had two controls, it would have been much better and much quicker. I'm going to have to skip through a lot of these, I think. Just keep flashing them through, please, yeah. The walls, oh, here's another one. Ways for physically challenged persons. I guess that was without steps. With a ramp. The walls and ceilings of the Hall of Private Audience, where the Raja gave audience to his subjects and met his officials, was decorated in a mosaic style with thousands of pieces of mirror, which at night, in candlelight, must have been spectacular. Women did a lot of the hard work around the places. The next place we stayed was in Samode, and as we reached the outskirts, most of us walked the 800 or metres so through the village, accompanied by many of the villagers, and there was a tree hanging on for dear life on the rock. One man accompanied me and said he painted miniatures, and when we got to the end and I thanked him for his company, another man replied, that would not put food in his belly. As the artist did not have any paintings with him, nor did he suggest I should buy anything, the comment surprised me. Wrong way. Wrong way. That way. This was the Samode Palace where we stayed overnight. That was a typical setup for getting meals in the hotels that we stayed. Just a huge layout for breakfast or dinner, it didn't matter when you went. It's a huge selection. There were quite a lot of monkeys around there. That was the farewell group to see us off. This was a place where we stopped for meals, and they had glamping, tents or hut accommodation. Feel the difference. And then the next one shows you one of their tents, their glamping tents. And there are a couple of good shots in one of these books too of other things at that place. Just keep going. We stopped at this small lake and the signs here intrigued me. Oh, sorry, I'll read them for you. Please do not cross the security barrier. Selfie at this location is risky. No selfie stick. Thank you. This was a cluster of royal memorials and cenotaphs. The main one was built in 1899. One of them held the ashes of the Maharaja and the others commemorated his wives and family members. Next we went to, keep going, to a fort which was situated up on the top of the hill. It's one of the most impressive and formidable structures in Rajasthan and contains several magnificent palaces now set up as museums. Young guide outside took a photo of me and then stood up and I had to take a photo of him through the window, but it loses something in lying down. Beautiful buildings. Now in this place there were several howdahs which were put onto the back of the elephant. There must have been a dozen, 18 of them. And there were also palanquins. And these were actually carried by people rather than put on an elephant, usually used by the women. And the manservants would carry them on those. And these were paintings on the walls. We then had a demonstration on how to tie the headscarf. If you just go through those, please. There were two men, and it would have been at least from here down to the table past, and that was the man on the other end. And the man on the right that we saw first, he's the one who's going to wrap it around his head. Pardon? I don't know, it was fairly light material. Our bus driver one morning when we got onto the bus had a slightly different headdress on. He was a Sikh, and when we were all settled, Vikram explained he was going to put his headdress on, and he had just a very tight black thing on first, and he stood, and we were sort of there in the bus, and he stood, he had a mirror there, and he wrapped it all around and tucked it all in and wrapped it round and tucked it in again, and when he finished it was like we saw him every day, and he's beautifully put on. And that coloured piece was about this wide at the end of the scarf, which gave some contrast to it. Several places that we went to, and Barry could attest to this, he spent a fortune, I think. You had to pay to take a still camera or a movie camera in. This particular day I did pay and took it in. The first time I paid 30 rupee, which was about 75 cents, and the second time cost me 100 rupee, which was $2. But it probably was $4 for a movie camera, which was what Barry had quite often. These were carpet weights, and apparently they're quite rare these days. The next photo shows the four of them quite clearly. You wouldn't want to kick your toe on that, would you? These were coins in the museum, and they're all going to be like this, unfortunately. rather ornate. Oh, sorry, Jeanette. A beautiful metal staircase. We went one night in jeeps to 3 villages, and this was the first one we went to visit a master potter. And these had already been fired and were waiting for sale, but he was making these water jugs. And his son packed a whole lot into the kiln, which they would have lit that night, and it would stay overnight. The next day they then put them out to dry in the sun before they go for sale. The next place we went to, when we were there, Carol presented the potter with one of the 3 bags that we had taken that contained books, pencils, koalas and all that sort of thing. Then we went to another family where we had a demonstration of preparing opium for guests, and those who wished could sample the liquid, which most of us did. Then the man produced a pipe in which he had local tobacco, and he and Vikram smoked that. Apparently it was very strong. Valerie presented the 2 remaining bags of goodies to the man, and we had group photo taken. And as we were leaving, the children, who were all very well behaved, were being gathered so that the items from the bags could be distributed to them. It was really nice to see them. They weren't grasping or anything like that. And then finally we went to a carpet weaving place. But I noticed this ingenious toothbrush holder. And that's on the roof, the thatched roof. And these were the ropes that went around to hold it all in place. And there's their toothbrushes. You make do with what you have. And we had a demonstration of a different style of carpet making. The previous one had been soft and very silky. These were rather coarse, hard, but they were made of wool, and they were put down. And we could try them out, as Leah did for us. Took her shoes off and had a walk across them. But nobody was tempted to buy anything at this one. This was what greeted us at the Ajit Bawan Palace. And then there was the doorman as well. A hangover from the days of the British Raj. There's a spice store that we passed along the road. Most of these were manned by men, and quite often you didn't see women buying. It was usually men out all the time. Another one of the hotels. Quite often they were built like this around an open courtyard. We could sit down in the courtyard, or you could look at the view from your balcony. That was Bougainvillea. It's huge. We had a cruise on this lake, Coca-Cola, and saw several hotels either along the water's edge, or some of them were actually built in the lake itself, and we went to one of them. We landed. And the boats you went out on were a bit like a ferry. They dropped you off and went back, and you just, when you were finished, you got on another one. And you can see elephants everywhere here. It just shows you how prevalent they were and how much they're revered by the Indian people. This was a rather luxurious hotel, I would say, from the look of it all. Quite interested in times at the signs, the gents and the ladies. Well, I'm spoiled by being like that. The window was rather pretty to frame the view that I could see. And these were modern taxis in Mumbai. Mumbai, a very modern city. We farewelled our guide in Udaipur, and then we flew to Mumbai, or Bombay as it used to be called in the time of the British. And the view from the window of our hotel looked across, that's the Arabian Sea. Mumbai has a population of 18.41 million people, and it's the business and financial capital of India. And the tuk-tuks here were replaced by modern taxis. We went to the Dhobi Ghat, a laundry where Mumbai's dirties are scrubbed, bashed, dyed and hung out to dry, all in the open air. How anybody knew what belonged to whom and went into the right bundle, I'll never know. It'd be somewhat like the thing that you've seen in movies where meals are delivered by train and then they're taken to the right man in his office. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see that, although it was listed on our itinerary. So this fascinated me as well, that you got back your towel or knickers or tablecloth that you sent in. Hopefully. Or if you didn't, you got one in better condition and you're lost.
When do you go in? Tomorrow week.
All hung very close together, but it was so warm over there that it would have dried without any trouble. We visited a museum here. We didn't have a lot of time. We were hurried along by our little guide, whom I think was a frustrated school teacher. You will not take photos while I am talking. When I have finished, you can take photos. He was a bit of a pain, I can tell you. And you can tell from the laughter of the people who went, that's what he was like. There were some other beautiful old buildings in Mumbai, as well as a lot of modern buildings in a part of the city that we didn't go to. We were out on the edge of the sea, and the modern buildings we could see in the distance seemed to be set quite back from the water. And this was rush hour at the end of the day as people were making their way into the station, which is on the right-hand side there. The next morning, our last day in India, we went down to catch a ferry, and this is the gateway of India, which was built to commemorate the visit of King George V and Queen Mary to Mumbai, or Bombay in those days, in December 1911. However, they only saw a carved board model of the monument, since construction did not begin until 1915. But it was a very impressive building, and really a gateway to India, because that's the main port on the western coast. We took this ferry over to Elephanta Caves, a 1,200-year-old series of caves that houses structures of the period, featuring the three-faced Shiva in his aspects as creator, preserver and destroyer. It looks as if he's doing the destroy bit in that one. They were unfortunately defaced in many ways, or broken away through years probably, where the stone has broken. But huge, huge things. Oh, much, much higher than this ceiling in many places. These were the rather steep steps, which I think everybody will agree, that we had to go up to get to those caves. We were there very early in the morning, and many of the storeholders had yet to come and open up, but when they did, it was souvenirs, dust collectors, and that sort of thing. And quite a lot of monkeys, and this was a nice one of a monkey with her young. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my presentation. Thank you very much.
I've been given the job because I was with you. And when I get up my photos and say to people, look at this, look at that, they say, where was that? And I say, India. I have absolutely enjoyed hearing the names of places that I've forgotten, the range of the things you showed, but I'm disappointed in one thing. Some of us went to the old Marigold Hotel.
I didn't, sorry.
Thank you for all the research and the wonderful presentation.
There were a couple of places I couldn't remember where they were, and I didn't put them in the presentation.
Those others in there.
Could you do a couple of drops? A blue F74.